history enthusiasts to a journey back in time, to an era where empires clashed, faiths collided, and the destiny of a continent hung in the balance. We are about to delve into one of the most pivotal and dramatic sagas in human history, the Ottoman Crusades and the fall of Constantinople. Our story doesn't begin with grand palaces or sprawling cities, but with a whisper in the wind, across the sun-baked plains of Anatolia in the late 13th century. The mighty Seljuk Sultanate, once the dominant power in the region, was crumbling, fragmented by Mongol invasions and internal strife. It was a time of chaos, certainly, but also a time of unparalleled opportunity. Like scattered seeds, numerous small Turkish beyliks or principalities began to sprout from the ruins. Among them, in a rather unassuming corner near modern-day Eskişehir, emerged a small band of Oghuz Turks, led by a man named Ertugrul. His son Osman would be the true architect of what was to come. Osman, a name that would echo through centuries, lending itself to the very empire he founded, the Ottoman Empire.
Now, Osman wasn't exactly born with a silver scimitar in his hand. His principality was a borderland state, constantly skirmishing with the Byzantine Empire, an empire that, while venerable, was a shadow of its former self. Think of it as a once magnificent mansion, now creaking and crumbling, with the paint peeling and the roof leaking, constantly fending off pesky squatters. The Byzantines, for all their glorious history, were increasingly isolated and weakened, their vast territories reduced to a few scattered enclaves, and the majestic city of Constantinople itself. He rallied warriors, both Turkic and even disaffected Byzantines, under the banner of Ghazis, frontier fighters driven by religious zeal and the promise of plunder. Their initial targets were the smaller, more vulnerable Byzantine towns and castles in Anatolia. These early victories were modest but cumulative. Each captured fortress provided new resources, new recruits, and a growing reputation. The Byzantines, too preoccupied with their own internal squabbles and the threats from the West, largely underestimated this burgeoning power to their east. A fatal error, as history would dramatically prove. Imagine a small spark in dry tinder, easy to ignore at first, but left unchecked, capable of engulfing an entire forest. By the time Osman passed away around 1323 or 1324, he had laid the foundational stone of a state that would, in less than 2 centuries, stretch from the Danube to the Euphrates. His successor, Orhan, took up the mantle with equal fervour. It was under Orhan that the Ottomans crossed into Europe, first establishing a foothold in Gallipoli in 1354, a strategically vital strait. This wasn't just a raiding party, this was a permanent establishment. The Ottomans had planted their flag on European soil. This expansion into the Balkans brought them face to face with the various Christian kingdoms of Serbia, Bulgaria, and Hungary, who were themselves often at odds with each other. A truly unfortunate coincidence for them, but a strategic gold mine for the Ottomans. Imagine trying to unite a group of squabbling siblings against a rapidly approaching, well-organized army. It rarely works out, does it?
The Battle of Kosovo in 1389 stands as a grim testament to Ottoman military's superiority and the disunity of the Balkan states. The Serbian army, a formidable force, was decisively crushed, and their prince, Lazar, was killed. It was a devastating blow that effectively shattered Serbian resistance and opened the floodgates for further Ottoman expansion into Europe. The Western European powers, often embroiled in their own dynastic struggles and the 100 Years' War between England and France, were slow to grasp the existential threat posed by the Ottomans. When they finally did, the response was, shall we say, a bit disjointed. The first significant crusade against the Ottomans was launched in 1396, led primarily by French and Hungarian knights, culminating in the Battle of Nicopolis. This grand Christian army, boasting some of the finest chivalry in Europe, marched with confidence, perhaps even arrogance. They expected an easy victory over what they perceived as infidel barbarians. The outcome, however, was a shocking and humiliating defeat for the Crusaders. The Ottoman Sultan Bayezid I, aptly nicknamed Yildirim or the Thunderbolt for his swift campaigns, utterly annihilated the Christian forces. Thousands were killed, many more captured and ransomed or executed. Nicopolis was a wake-up call, but it was a lesson that many in Europe were slow to learn. It demonstrated the Ottomans' tactical prowess, their disciplined Janissary corps, elite infantry formed from Christian boys levied through the Devashima system, trained and converted to Islam, and their sheer fighting spirit. The Ottomans were not just raiders, they were a sophisticated military machine, poised to become the dominant power in the East. Yet, even the greatest empires face setbacks. Just when the Ottomans seemed unstoppable, a storm rose from the east. The Mongol warlord Timur, or Tamerlane. In 1402, at the Battle of Ankara, Timur inflicted a crushing defeat on Bayezid I, even capturing the Sultan himself. The nascent Ottoman Empire was plunged into a period of interregnum, a civil war among Bayezid's sons that lasted for over a decade. It seemed the Ottoman dream might be stillborn, but like a phoenix, the empire would rise again. The resilience of the Ottoman state, its strong institutions, and the tenacity of its people allowed it to weather this brutal storm. By the mid-15th century, under ambitious and capable sultans like Murad II and Mehmed II, the empire had not only recovered, but emerged stronger and more focused. And there, glittering on the horizon, a prize of unimaginable value, lay the ultimate target, Constantinople. By the 15th century, the Byzantine Empire was a tragic figure on the world stage. Once the glorious heart of the Eastern Roman Empire, a beacon of civilization for 1,000 years, it was now reduced to a few scattered territories in Greece and, most importantly, the majestic city of Constantinople itself, a city of unparalleled beauty, legendary fortifications, and a spiritual heart for Orthodox Christianity, but now an isolated island in a sea of Ottoman power. Imagine a grand old oak tree, struck by lightning again and again, its branches withered, its trunk hollowed, but still defiantly standing. That was Constantinople.
Its emperors, like Constantine XI, Palaiologos, were men of courage and conviction, but they presided over a state with dwindling resources, a shrinking population, and an increasingly desperate outlook. The Ottoman campaigns during this period were relentless, methodical, and ever encroaching. Sultan Murad II, a formidable warrior and administrator, spent much of his reign consolidating Ottoman power in the Balkans and Anatolia. He launched numerous campaigns against the remaining Christian holdouts, pushing ever closer to Constantinople. The Byzantines, in their desperation, often appealed to the West for help, promising reunification of the Eastern and Western churches, a deeply controversial move for their Orthodox population. Yet the help was either too little, too late, or fraught with political strings that made it almost unpalatable. The memory of the Fourth Crusade in 1204, when Latin crusaders sacked Constantinople itself, still festered like an open wound, making any genuine alliance difficult. It was like asking someone who just robbed your house to help you fight off a new invader. Awkward, to say the least.
The year 1444 saw another significant attempt by the West to halt the Ottoman advance, the Crusade of Varna, a large Christian army, predominantly Hungarian and Polish, led by King Władysław III of Poland and the famed Hungarian general John Hunyadi, marched south. It was a last-ditch effort, and for a moment it seemed to hold promise. But Murad II, despite having abdicated in favour of his son Mehmed, was recalled to lead the Ottoman forces. At the Battle of Varna, the Crusaders suffered another catastrophic defeat. King Władysław was killed, and the flower of Central European chivalry was once again mown down by Ottoman might. This victory solidified Ottoman control over much of the Balkans and dispelled any lingering illusions that the West could easily dislodge them.
Meanwhile, Constantinople itself was becoming increasingly isolated. Ottoman territories now surrounded the city on all sides, effectively cutting off its land supply routes and strangling its economy. The once bustling metropolis, a crossroads of the world, was slowly fading. Its population had dwindled significantly, its grand palaces were in disrepair, and its once mighty walls, though still impressive, were aging and stretched thin by limited defenders. The balance of power had irrevocably shifted. The Byzantines were no longer a threat, they were a nuisance, a proud, defiant thorn in the side of a burgeoning empire that saw itself as the true heir to Rome. The Ottomans, increasingly confident and militarily advanced, viewed Constantinople as not just a strategic prize, but a symbolic necessity. It was the jewel that would complete their crown, the bridge between East and West, and the heart of a truly universal empire.
This growing ambition, this inexorable push towards the ancient city, was powerfully embodied in one man, Mehmed II. He ascended to the throne for the second time in 1451, a young man of only 19, but with a fierce intellect, boundless energy, and an unshakable resolve. He was a scholar, a linguist, and a military genius who harbored one consuming obsession: the conquest of Constantinople. It wasn't just a political goal, it was a personal destiny.
Mehmed saw himself as the fulfillment of ancient prophecies, the one who would bring the prophesied city under Muslim rule. He carefully studied its defenses, amassed an unprecedented army, and commissioned the construction of massive cannons, unlike anything the world had ever seen. He was meticulous, relentless, and absolutely determined.
One of Mehmed's first significant moves was the construction of the formidable Rumeli Hisari fortress on the European side of the Bosphorus, directly opposite the existing Anadolu Hisari fortress on the Asian side. These two fortresses effectively controlled the narrow strait, cutting off Constantinople's access to the Black Sea and any potential relief from Genoese or Venetian colonies. It was a chokehold, a clear declaration of intent. The Byzantine Emperor, Constantine XI, watched with growing dread as these massive walls rose from the earth. He knew with a chilling certainty that the final act of a 1,000-year drama was about to unfold. The stage was set, the players assembled, and the ultimate prize, the Queen of Cities, awaited its fate. The siege of Constantinople was no longer a question of if, but when, and everyone knew when Mehmed II decided to strike, he struck with the force of a thunderbolt.
The year is 1453. Spring had barely arrived, but the air around Constantinople was thick with an ominous tension. Sultan Mehmed II, at the head of an army estimated to be between 80,000 and 150,000 strong, had arrived. He had brought with him not only a vast host of soldiers, but also an unprecedented siege train, including colossal cannons cast specifically for this task, weapons capable of smashing the legendary Theodosian walls, which had stood impregnable for over 1,000 years.
Imagine the fear, the desperation, but also the resolute courage within the city. Emperor Constantine XI had perhaps 7,000 to 10,000 defenders, a paltry number against such an overwhelming force. Among them were a small contingent of Western volunteers, notably the Genoese commander Giovanni Giustiniani Longo, a warrior of immense skill and bravery. These men knew they were fighting for more than just a city. They were fighting for the last vestiges of the Roman Empire, for a symbol of Christendom, for their very way of life. The siege began in earnest on April 6th. For weeks, the Ottoman cannons pounded the ancient walls, creating breaches that the Byzantines and their allies frantically repaired under the cover of darkness. The defenders fought with incredible valor, repelling wave after wave of Ottoman assaults. It was a desperate dance of destruction and reconstruction, of courage and sacrifice.
One of the most audacious and brilliant tactical moves of the siege, and indeed of military history, came on April 22nd. The Byzantines had secured the Golden Horn, the city's natural harbour, with a massive chain, preventing the Ottoman fleet from entering. Mehmed, frustrated, ordered his engineers to construct a massive log road, greased with animal fat, over a hill. Under the cover of darkness, he then dragged his fleet, dozens of warships, overland, bypassing the chain and launching them into the Golden Horn. Imagine the shock and dismay of the Byzantines as they woke to find an Ottoman fleet sailing in their previously secure harbour. It was a move of pure genius, a testament to Mehmed's innovative thinking and relentless determination. It stretched the already thin Byzantine defences even further and demoralised the defenders, who saw their last avenue of potential relief now threatened. As the siege wore on, the pressure became unbearable. Giustiniani, the Genoese commander, was wounded, and his departure from the walls dealt a severe blow to morale. The defenders were exhausted, their numbers dwindling, their hopes fading. The final assault came on May 29th. In the pre-dawn hours, under a moonless sky, Mehmed unleashed his full might. Wave after wave of Ottoman soldiers, first the irregulars, then the Anatolian troops, and finally the elite Janissaries, surged towards the breaches in the walls. The fighting was savage, hand to hand, a desperate struggle in the fading darkness. Emperor Constantine XI, true to his lineage, fought valiantly at the breach, shedding his imperial regalia and leading his men in a final, doomed charge. Accounts vary, but all agree he died fighting, a Roman emperor defending his city until the very end.
With the emperor fallen and the defences finally overwhelmed, the Ottomans poured into the city. The unthinkable had happened. Constantinople, the impregnable city, the second Rome, had fallen. For 3 days the city was subjected to pillage, a brutal but common practice of the time for cities that resisted to the last man. The bloodshed was immense, the destruction heartbreaking. On May 29, 1453, Mehmed II rode triumphantly into the city, making his way to the Hagia Sophia, the magnificent cathedral that had stood for nearly 1,000 years. He ordered it converted into a mosque, symbolically cementing the new order. The sound of Christian prayers was replaced by the call to prayer, echoing through its vast dome.
The fall of Constantinople sent shockwaves across Europe. It was an event of seismic proportions, marking the definitive end of the Roman Empire and the dramatic rise of the Ottoman Empire as a dominant global power. The city, renamed Istanbul, would become the new capital of the Ottoman realm, a vibrant, multicultural metropolis that blended East and West, Islam and Christianity for centuries to come. Mehmed II earned the epithet Fatih, the Conqueror, a name that would forever be etched in history. He transformed Istanbul into a thriving intellectual and commercial centre, attracting scholars, artists and merchants from across the world. The Ottoman Empire, under his successors, would continue its expansion, reaching its zenith in the 16th century under Suleiman the Magnificent.
The legacy of the Ottoman Crusades and the fall of Constantinople is complex and enduring. For the West, it represented a profound loss, a strategic and psychological blow that fueled centuries of anti-Ottoman sentiment and continued crusading efforts. For the Orthodox world, it was a tragedy, the loss of their spiritual and political heart, though their faith endured under Ottoman rule. For the Ottomans, it was the ultimate triumph, the fulfillment of a long-held dream, and the solidifying of their identity as a world empire. It allowed for the fusion of diverse cultures, technologies, and ideas that would enrich the empire for centuries. The Ottoman Empire would become a bridge between civilizations, influencing art, architecture, science, and governance across a vast swathe of the world.